Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into this edition of my top starts and sits for week 7 of this NFL season. We're almost getting to the halfway point of the schedule, so you need to start making that big push to get into your playoffs. But with that being said, I'll give you guys, as always, my top 2 starts and sits for the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. As always, starting at the most important position in football at quarterback, my top start of the week, I am going to go with Baker Mayfield against the Ravens on Monday night. This matchup for him, the Ravens have allowed the third most points per game against the quarterback position so far this year. And then when you look at their last 4 games, the Ravens defense, they have allowed 3 different quarterbacks to throw over 265 yards against them. And then in those 4 games, they've allowed 9 passing touchdowns, so over 2 touchdowns a game. This Bucs offense has been on fire this season. I'm looking for that to continue for Baker Mayfield and company on Monday night. Speaking of another Monday night quarterback that I like, Justin Herbert against the Cardinals. The Cardinals are allowing the 4th most allowed points per game to quarterbacks this year. In their last 4 games, they've allowed 3 different quarterbacks to throw for at least 230 yards against them. And then they have given up 8 passing touchdowns in their last 4 games. So that's 2 touchdowns a game. So I'm looking for Herbert to cross that 230 mark and get at least 2 touchdowns on Monday night against Arizona. My top sits of the week. Yeah, you might want to play him because he got his boy Devontae Adams. He's got Garrett Wilson. But Aaron Rodgers does have a tough matchup against the Steelers. The Steelers are allowing the 4th fewest points per game against quarterbacks this season. In their last 4 games, only one quarterback threw for over 230 yards against their defense, and that was Dak Prescott a couple weeks ago. Now, they have given up 6 passing touchdowns in their last 4 games. So if you do decide you want to play Rodgers, since he's going to have his boy in the lineup this week, you're just going to have to hope that he at least gets you 2 touchdowns to have a positive outcome in your lineup. My other sit, I'm going to go with Kyler Murray against the Chargers. Now, in seasonal leagues, you're probably going to keep him in your lineup. You kind of just got to take the ebbs and flows with Kyler Murray this season. He has those high ceiling performances, then he's kind of had some floor performances at times. But as far as like daily lineups or like prop bets, if you're trying to bet on the over or if you want him in your daily lineup, I would look to avoid him this week. Going against the Chargers defense, who has allowed the 5th fewest points per game against the quarterback position. Over their last 4 games, 2 quarterbacks have reached over 230 passing yards. That was Justin Fields and Patrick Mahomes. So that's kind of the silver lining if you do want to leave Murray in your lineup. But they've only given up 4 passing touchdowns in their last 4 games, so that's a touchdown a game. So you're going to be betting on him at least getting the yards, and maybe his rushing floor can give you a high. His rushing ability can give you a high floor if you decide to leave him in your lineup. But if you have a different option on your bench to go with different than Kyler Murray, I would consider it in week 7. Moving into the running back position, my top start of the week, I'm going to go with Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler against the Panthers. Now, you're going to have to monitor Brian Robinson Jr.'s status because he did miss this past game with that injury. He was limited in practice today. Now, if Brian Robinson is not able to go, then I definitely like firing up Austin Eckler in my lineups this weekend. Going against this Panthers defense, who's allowing the most points per game against running backs this season. In their last 4 games, they have allowed, this is 4 games, that means they've allowed 2 different running backs on the same team to do this, which is why I like even Robinson Jr. and Eckler if Robinson Jr. still does end up playing. 5 different running backs have finished with at least 75 total yards against Carolina in their last 4 games, and then on top of that, they've given up 10 touchdowns to running backs in their last 4 games. So if you got these guys on your teams, I would definitely have them in your lineups this week. Another guy I like, especially since Tajay Spears is likely not going to be playing on Sunday, I like Tony Pollard against the Bills. The Bills have allowed the 4th most points per game against running backs this year. In their last 4 games, they have allowed 5 different running backs to finish with at least 85 total yards. Now, they've only given up 4 touchdowns to running backs in their last 4 games, but when you see the 5 running backs in 4 games have finished with at least 85 total yards against that Bills defense, and then Pollard doesn't have to worry about Tajay Spears cutting into his touches, I see this as a ceiling performance for Pollard this week. My sit of the week, it's going to be Jordan Mason against the Chiefs. He's not expected to miss any time. He was limited in practice today, but even if he does play, I would still look to avoid him this week. Not only he's going to be more than likely playing a little banged up with that AC joint, but he's got a very tough matchup against this Chiefs defense. The Chiefs have allowed the fewest points per game against running backs this season. In their last 4 games, the most rushing yards that a running back has finished with is 34 yards, and that was Zach Moss. And they have only given up one running back touchdown in their last 4 games. So combined with him being entering this game banged up and having a tough matchup, I would just prefer to leave Mason on my bench this week. Another guy I would look to sit, even though he's coming off his best game in his rookie season, I would consider sitting Bucky Irving against the Ravens. The Ravens are tied for the third fewest points per game allowed against running backs this year. In their last 4 games, the most rushing yards that a single running back has finished with was 46 rushing yards, and that was Chase Brown. And then they've only given up 2 running back touchdowns in their last 4 games. So if you end up leaving Irving in your lineup, you're going to have to bet that he's going to try to at least get you 40 plus total yards and a touchdown. Otherwise, it's going to be a very low floor performance for him on Monday night. Moving into the wide receiver position, my top star of the week, of course, you're going to play Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't have to tell you that, but I like his counterpart, Jameson Williams, against the Vikings. The Vikings is good, awesome as their defense has been this season. They're actually allowing the third most fantasy points per game against the wide receiver position. Over the Minnesota's last 4 games, 6 different wide receivers have finished with at least 75 receiving yards at the minimum, and they have given up 5 touchdowns to wide receivers in their last 4 games. So I'm looking for a big performance out of Jameson Williams. I would expect Brian Flores trying to take away Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is going to open up things for Jameson Williams. He's been a boom or bust wide receiver this year in fantasy football, and I'm looking for a boom week out of Williams in week 7. My other top start, feeding off my start of Justin Herbert, I really like Ladd McConkey against the Cardinals on Monday night. The Cardinals are allowing the 6th most points per game to the wide receiver position this year. 3 different wide receivers have finished with at least 75 receiving yards against Arizona in their last 4 games, and they have given up 6 wide receiver touchdowns in their last 4 games. McConkey is the leading wide receiver for Los Angeles. I'm looking for him to have his best performance so far in his rookie year. So if you had Ladd McConkey, you kind of been wondering, well, should I play him or not? I think this is the week you'd want him in your lineups. My sit of the week, my top sit, I am going to go with Khalil Shakir against the Titans. Obviously, they traded for Amari Cooper. Brandon Beam was on the Pat McAfee show today, and he mentioned that they're going to try to get Amari Cooper involved this week, but I don't expect him to have like a once he gets settled in the offense. This is not going to be like his normal snaps that he'll be getting probably in 3 to 4 weeks with this offense in Buffalo. But regardless, he's going to be in the offense. He's going to see some targets on Sunday, which is going to take away from Shakir a little bit. But I just don't like Shakir's matchup going against the Titans. They're allowing the 2nd fewest points per game to wide receivers this year. In their last 4 games, the most receiving yards one wide receiver has finished with was 67 receiving yards, and that was Christian Watson about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then they've only given up 2 wide receiver touchdowns in the last 4 games, which actually happened to came this past Sunday. So that means there's 3 of those 4 games where a wide receiver didn't even find the end zone against Tennessee defense. So if you have a better option than Shakir, I would definitely consider doing that. My other sit of the week, I am going to go with George Pickens against the Jets. Obviously, Pickens has been a very big letdown so far this year. And the reason why, a couple things. A, it sounds like Russell Wilson is going to be playing on Sunday night as the Steelers quarterback. So we don't know if they have any type of chemistry and what that offense is going to look like with Russell Wilson. And then when you look at this matchup against the Jets are allowing the 4th fewest points per game to wide receivers this year. Only in their last 4 games, the Jets have only let 1 wide receiver cross 70 receiving yards, and that happens to be the best wide receiver in the league, Justin Jefferson. So that's even makes me not think that George Pickens is going to get that. He's likely going to see one-on-one coverage with Sauce Gardner often throughout that matchup. And then lastly, the Jets have only given up 2 wide receiver touchdowns in their last 4 games. So this is going to be more than likely a floor outcome for Pickens if you wanted to put him in your lineup this week. My top start of the week, I think this is going to be a very big boom for the rookie tight end in Las Vegas, especially since Devontae Adams isn't there anymore. He is their top target guy in Las Vegas. Love Brock Bowers against the Rams this week. The Rams are allowing the most points per game against tight ends this year. In their last 4 games, 2 different tight ends have finished with at least 65 receiving yards against Los Angeles, and they have given up 3 tight end touchdowns in their last 4 games, which is quite a bit this season when you consider tight ends scoring touchdowns this year. So I'm looking for him not only get those yards, but also get 1 or 2 touchdowns against the Rams on Sunday. A sneaky streaming option, because he could be available on the waiver still in your leagues if you're looking to stream a tight end. I like Hunter Henry against the Jaguars in this London matchup on Sunday morning. Going against the Jaguars, who have allowed the 3rd most points per game against tight ends this year. In their last 4 games, they have allowed 2 different tight ends to finish with at least 40 receiving yards. But why I really like Henry is the Jaguars have allowed 4 tight end touchdowns over their last 4 games. So I like the idea of Henry getting to 40 plus yards and finding the end zone. And also what helps too is he has Drake May at the quarterback position. Everybody always talks about rookie quarterbacks love their tight ends. They're their safety valve within the offense. So I'm looking for a ceiling type of performance out of Henry this week. My top sitter of the week, I am going to go with Dalton Kincaid against the Titans. Again, this Titans defense doesn't get a lot of credit for how good they've been this year, just because of how bad how inconsistent their passing attack has been on offense. So their record and everything makes you view the Titans just as a whole as a bad team, but their defense has been pretty good this year. Then when you look at this matchup for Dalton Kincaid, going against the Titans, who have allowed the fewest points per game against tight ends this year. The most receiving yards a single tight end has had against the Titans in their last 4 games, that was 41 receiving yards for Mo Alie-Cox. And what's notable too is they have not let a tight end score a touchdown this season. So this is either like a touchdown, I think it's like a touchdown, or at least maybe he gets some yards for you if you decide to leave Kincaid in your lineup. But if you have a better option, or if you maybe want to go pick up Hunter Henry and stream him over Kincaid this week, that is something I would definitely consider. A guy that's been a good, solid streaming option when the matchup is right, Mike Gesicki. I don't like him this week to stream him against the Browns. The Browns are tied for the 6th fewest points per game allowed against the tight ends. Now, maybe you could look at this as a silver lining, but the most yards they allowed to a single tight end in their last 4 games was 67 receiving yards. It actually happened to come this last Sunday, but that was Grant Calcaterra, who's the backup tight end for the Eagles. No offense to Grant Calcaterra, but I'm just going to guess the Browns had more focus on the return of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and they kind of just didn't think they let Calcaterra kind of get open, which led him to having a big receiving performance against their defense. And also, too, why I don't like the Mike Gesicki this week is just like the Titans defense, the Browns have not allowed a tight end to score a touchdown so far this year. So if you're maybe considering streaming Gesicki, I would look at another option like Hunter Henry. So yeah, those are my top starts and sits for week 7 of this season. As always, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed or followed me on all my social media platforms, please make sure you do. I'm on YouTube, TikTok, X, Instagram. You can usually look up at Cody Talks NFL, but I have a link tree on my X account if you just want to find it all in one place. Other than that, guys, you'll get me back next Tuesday for my top waiver wire ads and streamable defenses. I'll talk to you then. Wish you the best of luck. Hope you get a W. Enjoy your night, evening, morning, weekend, whenever you're watching this. Peace out.